In 1969, Richard Nixon appealed to a great silent majority of Americans, invoking an unseen population to establish political legitimacy. Modern discourse follows a similar pattern. A highly vocal minority produces the vast majority of commentary, while people with dissenting views observe without speaking. Behavioral scientists call this the spiral of silence. When people perceive their own views as socially isolated, they self-censor. This makes the dominant view appear even more popular, which in turn drives further self-censorship. This cycle relies on a specific flaw in human observation, a systemic failure in processing missing information. A new 2026 study by UC Berkeley economists Yoon Ho and Yihong Huang isolates the mathematical components of this failure. They identify selection neglect as the core mechanism, the human tendency to place heavy weight on expressed signals, while failing to treat silence as a distinct Bayesian signal. By examining their two-stage signaling model and experimental data, we can see exactly how unexpressed data distorts our perception of reality. For elite communicators and strategists, silence acts as a variable dictating the balance of narrative power. The first stage of the model focuses on the sender, the individual deciding whether to speak up. A sender with an unpopular view faces three paths: truth, a lie, or silence. The truth triggers direct social sanction and moral judgment, making honesty costly. Lying avoids backlash, but the psychological cost of fabricating a belief is higher than the social threat. The Berkeley study found that only 2% of participants lied about their views. Instead, 60% defaulted to silence. Self-censorship prioritizes silence because it avoids both social and psychological penalties, even though it removes vital data from the public square. The second stage of the model focuses on the receiver, the public attempting to understand the consensus based on whatever visible discourse survived the first stage. The parameter lambda represents attention to silence. A receiver with lambda of 1 infers hidden dissent from empty space using Bayes' rule. However, most default to lambda 0, treating expressed views as a fully representative sample. This inattention guarantees a misperception of the social norm, as the public mistakes the vocal minority for the majority. The result is a false equilibrium, where senders continue to hide their dissent because they believe they are in the minority, while receivers fail to account for the missing information. Ho and Huang tested this mechanism by having Berkeley students discuss highly sensitive topics, like renaming public schools that honor controversial historical figures. The control group received this pie chart, which only visualized the students who spoke up. By excluding those who stayed quiet, this environment encouraged a lambda 0 bias. The treatment group saw the same data, but with the addition of this massive gray slice representing the 13 students who remained silent. This forced the students to pay attention to the missing data. This simple visual cue caused the treatment group to reduce their estimate of the dominant view's popularity by 10% compared to the control group. Once the perceived consensus dropped, so did the expected social sanction. Consequently, treatment group dissenters became twice as likely to express their views in subsequent discussions. These results show how the visibility of a silent cohort can reset the perceived boundaries of a discussion. In professional public relations, strategists use this cognitive blind spot to manage crises and steer the public narrative. In 2016, Taylor Swift faced an intense period of public backlash and negative media coverage. At that moment, the social sanction against her had reached its peak. Any public statement, whether defensive or apologetic, would have incurred massive friction costs. Instead, she withdrew from the spotlight entirely. This withdrawal starved the public of new signals, pausing the cycle of negative assumptions and freezing the news cycle. Swift's silence functioned as a calculated denial of data to an inattentive audience, preserving her brand until she was ready for a controlled reset. We can also see silence used proactively in the case of Barron Trump, who has maintained a low profile during his father's hyper-visible political campaigns. By electing not to engage, he avoids providing data points that a polarized and inattentive public would use to form biased conclusions. This contrasts with the high-volume expression typical of his family's political brand. His privacy generates zero signals for the public to misinterpret. In an attention-scarce world, observers struggle to account for what isn't there. We often mistake what is visible for the absolute truth. Accounting for the unsaid offers a tool for navigating environments where the visible represent only a fraction of the truth.